a little confusing in the future today, but that's. Collaboration. But other than that,
Did get an email just now from Dr. Yeager about the bond, so that's exciting. Well, yeah, so that will be some great opportunities for our students in the years to come. So thankful to live in a community that continues to support our public schools. So with that, I think today, in many ways, kind of marks the beginning of like the negotiation season. So I want to thank you all again for your work at this table and away from this table. It is one of those other duties as assigned that is both an honor and a pleasure, and also I know a lot of additional work. So time away from your family. So we appreciate that and acknowledge that despite the challenge at the negotiations table, we all are here for the same reason, to keep the best educators we can. So with that, I have kept the annual review items at the top of the agenda just as a reminder. Retirement insurance benefit and VERT we have in March. We've got another meeting in March, so I was kind of assuming we wanted to circle back to that for our March 31st meeting, but I just thought I'd keep that on there until we're done with all of those topics. And then go into committee updates. And of course, the main meat of today is to review our letters of intent to negotiate. So with that, I went ahead and put, I believe, the committee's appraisal, ECAS calendar that have met since our last meeting. But if I miss anything, please let me know. The last appraisal meeting I had to miss, but I did get caught up thanks to Justin Howe and some O&E members of the committee. Overall, we feel like we're on track to meet our goal of bringing to this group a committee recommendation of adjustments to the pilot appraisal that is currently being piloted at some of the buildings. The issues that have had a lot of conversation in the last meeting, really looking at what to do with how we want to approach goals with our career educators. We're getting some feedback from those educators about how to tie goals into appraisal, because that is, of course, like part of the requirements, but we want to make it to where it actually makes sense as well. And then we spent a lot of time in the last appraisal meeting about the support processes. We're trying to use the correct words, both the building support plan and then what used to be referred to as the assistance program, which is now called the district support process. Happy for others who attended the meeting to add anything to that. All right. Our extracurricular academic support committee, we had a record-breaking number of proposals that came in. So we are approaching the work of that committee a little differently. Today we had like a drop-in meeting to help members of the committee get any like one-on-one questions answered. What we've done is we've taken all of the proposals, so all of the new proposals this year. I want to say there was like 14. That number may not be right. Yeah, it was a pretty large number, plus some of the proposals that have gone through the committee process previously, but just didn't make it into the negotiations package. We are looping back to those creators of those proposals to get any missing information. Obviously, the cost of the proposals is always important, but particularly in a time of tight budgets, the cost of proposals are really, really, really important. So we are working on making sure we can bring all of those voices to the table and have the most information possible. Generally, as you all know, the CEAS committee will rank the proposals in terms of their recommendations. So rather than bringing to us, here are the only two that we think you should consider, they'll select the ECAS proposals they think have the required information to make a recommendation, and then ranks that and brings it to the committee or brings it to a professional counsel. And I know I've got members of the committee who have been on it longer than me who might have other things to add as well. Yeah. We will meet again on the 11th. Our goal would be to do the ranking probably that week after spring break. If we need to meet on the 25th of March, we will. But our goal was to get those recommendations to this group in early April if possible. So that I think we're on track with that. Okay. I'll let you start with calendar, Clint, so people can hear another voice besides mine.
All right, so calendar, we met on last one, so a couple of weeks ago. We got some more information about the professional learning calendar. I think looking for some feedback on that too. I think the members were going to go back and get some feedback on the professional learning calendar. And then we also shared the draft calendar for, I get it right, 27, 28, I believe so,
Yes.
right? Yes, 27, 28. I know it seems a long way away, but so yeah, shared the draft calendar for that again, and we kind of talked through some of the challenges of this year's calendar and how they're not challenges for next year or that one, then 27, 28 because of the way Memorial Day falls. So kind of highlight some things there, but really shared it with the committee so they can get their eyes on it and take some time to look at it prior to our next meeting on the 10th, next Tuesday. Yeah, next Tuesday. So we'll circle back to that and then start narrowing down that calendar to get it ready to go also. And then the supporting documents, of course. As Eric said, it's important to get that first calendar nailed down so that we can start working on the employment calendars, which we already have people asking about. So.
Yeah, I think we continue to do what we can to clarify to not only committee members, but everybody in the bargaining unit, as well as administrators, what have you, about the implications that the different types of days have on our student contact time. So educator prep counts as 0 student contact time. PD counts, or professional learning counts, as half. And of course, you all are aware that conference time and actual student contact time counts as 1-to-1 student minutes. So all of that is important to keep in mind. And then lastly, our variance committee generally meets via email. So I don't have any brand new updates, but I just wanted to put on the agenda that I did send you all, and then I resent it again because your inboxes I know are very full. An update on the 2-year academy and Mill Creek variance for conference this year rather. And that feedback, of course, showed a lot of support for continuing that variance. So we might start having conversations about what would that look like in our agreement. I don't know if that's something we want the conference committee to make a recommendation on what it would look like, or if we just want to hash it out here. Maybe not a decision we have to make today, but generally once you've had a pilot and there's support, then it becomes part of the agreement. So we'll just want to kind of figure out what is the best process to have that conversation. Did I miss any committees? All right. I think we're ready to review our intent to negotiate letters. Hey, you got mine all set up.
I know.
Just thought I'd started out this evening just kind of framing what everybody understands. You know, everyone's aware of the significant budget challenges, anything from the rising special ed costs versus the funding at the state level. We're in decline. And on the funding formula, so we're a little bit of
That's nice. Yeah.
like I said, with those challenges facing us, we're gonna have to figure out how to be as creative as possible, flexible. So that's what you see in the language of the letter. There's no real specific topics that we outline exactly what we want to talk about in the way of, can you click to the next one, of compensation or hours and amount worked. It's really just to open up that conversation that as we get deeper and deeper into this, we didn't want to be in a situation where we go, oh, we didn't put that in the letter, therefore we can't discuss it as we try to figure out how to make everything work. Similarly, if you want to click forward, even though it's not a negotiated item, the board has not made a formal decision on this, but just notifying in that mix of all variables would be the verb and the retirement plan. So no decisions, just, and once again, that's a component, not necessarily a negotiable item, but wanted you to be fully aware. We'll be looking at everything to try to figure out how do we get through this year and potentially the coming years. So not a lot of detail to tell you. That's why it's somewhat very high level in the letter. Answer any questions you want.
Just for maybe people that aren't as
Sure.
into all of the language as possible, could you just kind of clarify like what the process is? Should the board decide to
Sure.
do or like
Yes.
what that looks like?
Yeah, the process is they have to notify the professional counsel 1 year prior to it. It's so preliminary, there hasn't been a discussion of if we have to attain that, what would that look like? It's just very much a discussion. Several dozen things as we free up resources and put them into other forms of compensation. Or maybe the legislature will come back and fully fund special education. There'll be no conversations about it, but that's why the language is there. So more details to come as we start, as things play out. Just
So this relates back to what Angie was referring to earlier in regard to the appraisal committee, which has been continuing to meet. So this is just kind of a quick refresher, if you will, of what we discussed last year and had piloted this year. So we have the KEEP being piloted in 5 of our buildings. And then in addition to that, we also have, if you click one more for me, created the KEEP rubrics for these specialized employment groups as well. So that has been continued to be piloted this year. If you click one more. And so what we would be looking at is the recommendation to come from that appraisal committee to be expanding the pilot to all of our buildings for next year. So they're still working on some of the pieces, as Angie had mentioned previously, and kind of continuing to evaluate the rubrics and make adjustments along the way. Justin Howe's done an awesome job in leading that group this year and continue to meet on a regular basis. And I know that that committee has put out a couple of surveys even to our early career educators and as well as our career educators to get insight and feedback, and then had continued feedback from the individuals, the appraisers for the specialized rubrics, as well as those building leaders that are piloting the KEEP this year. then I think the next one's mine as well. So insurance and benefits, I just wanted to provide a little bit of background on this as well. I think I've mentioned before, and our benefits committee has continued to be in the loop as we've gone out to market for our health and pharmacy plan. So we worked with our partners at Lockton, who put together that RFP. So that went out in December. And I'm sorry, the RFP went to market in January actually, and then they compiled the results from that in February, and we'll have an initial marketing results meeting with Lockton here in the next week, where we'll hear what those proposals look like that were returned to us. Eric Hansen has a benefits committee meeting already scheduled for next week. And so in that meeting, we'll be able to give the benefits committee highlights from the marketing results that Lockton will be sharing with us. And then as we move into March and April, that's really when we'll start narrowing down and looking at kind of the finalists and having finalist meetings. And then there's always a period after that where they have kind of a best and final offer that comes where we'll evaluate those. This all kind of gets a little blurred as we work through kind of timelines with spring break in the middle of March and all of that, but would anticipate in April or May kind of being able to finalize what those proposals look like. And
sorry, you're the only meeting in the village. Whoop, whoop.
Just wanted to have this included because obviously this is a part of our negotiations as well. And then I just had the same little blurb that John had mentioned in terms of benefits, of course, are another large portion of our budget. And so as we look to knowing a little bit more what that budget looks like, this will certainly weigh into that as well, as we think about not only the carrier that we go with, but then also the plan options. And then from there, looking at what our premium costs would be incurred by all of us as employees of the district. So.
And just to make sure it's clear, the proposals is for the 2027 benefit year.
Yeah, so this gets a little convoluted, right? Because our benefits run on the calendar year. So yes, we've already locked in on what our benefit package and offerings are that we all did in our early enrollment in November. So yes, this would be for the start of 1/1/27.
Can I ask a couple more questions just for clarification?
Sure.
Yes. Some of the things that have popped on surveys are about, can we just get rid of appraisal for career educators? Could you speak to the requirement for evaluation?
Yeah, so statute dictates that educators have to be evaluated at least once every 3 years. So yes.
And then the second question that's popped is the student performance data as part of appraisal. Could you speak to that?
Yes, that is a part of that statutory language as well, that requires that there is a component included in all educator appraisals that links to student achievement. So yes, that's important. Thank you. Sure. Yeah, thanks for asking.
All right, and the final slide here. We mentioned in our letter the scheduling documents for elementary, middle, and high schools, Appendix B in the negotiating agreement. And similar to what John mentioned at the beginning with the compensation and hours, amounts of work, obviously with budget uncertainty, we don't know where we're at right now. Obviously, the legislature isn't done. But once we get that a little bit further down the road, knowing some of those things, portions of those scheduling documents or the entire scheduling document may need to look at and review to allow some flexibility in dealing with that current, maybe future budgetary challenges and constraints. So we don't have a specific proposal right now. Just wanted to make sure that that was noticed up so that as we move through the process and have more information, if there are things in there that we would need to look at, then we can bring those back to the table as a proposal. So again, no specific proposal, but just wanted to make sure that was on the table and make you aware. And then we had a slide for questions, but yes, as you went. But if you have any further questions, everybody always ends the presentation with questions, right? Whether
the benefits piece, is there a component of Watkins analysis that looks at like customer satisfaction with the different companies? And I know that's something I've heard a lot is like people scared, oh, what if we, this company, I've heard that thing. It's like,
Yeah, yes, that's a piece to it. Another portion that they look at is just looking at something they call disruption. So that is like, how big of an adjustment would this be from what we are currently accustomed to? Whether that is that customer service piece of things or network, you know, how big is the difference between the
how
networks?
many people might need to make changes to.
Right. A lot of times when we get into these, no matter the carrier, they have there are some things that are pretty typical. You know, like when you talk about a broad network and a narrow network, they typically all have that piece. It's then where Lockton does the analysis to see, okay, what they describe as a broad network, how similar or dissimilar is that from what we consider and currently have as a broad network and that kind of thing. So yeah, but they will incorporate that as well. I don't know that satisfaction with insurance is ever off the charts. But
Fair.
there you do. Yes.
Moving for you.
Be able to look this on your screen. We have it at bit.ly only letter. That one just for a moment. We also do not have like specific proposals today. However, we did want to build into our letter some flexibility, knowing that we are not in optimal conditions in terms of budget. So we wanted to kind of acknowledge that as well. I think I stalled long enough. Uh-oh. Oh, sorry. I'm gonna get the right place. Oh, there we go. Perfect. All right. So just as you framed your letter with the priorities of the district, Olathe NEA, of course, is also dedicated to those same priorities. And we want to make sure that we can negotiate a contract that will allow every educator to meet every student's needs every day. So that continues to be kind of our guiding light as we navigate this tough budgetary time. Retention has for the last couple of years been something that has been a shared value. And despite the fact that we are aligning buildings to enrollment size, we believe that is still a shared value because being able to retain our highest quality educators is truly an important piece of meeting our students' needs. So one of the questions that we asked on our bargaining survey was simply if people think they will be in Olathe School District in the next 5 years. And we did have about 75% of our staff who responded to the survey answer yes to that question. Many who answer no, maybe retiring or moving on to different careers. We didn't necessarily get into the why they answered no, but I wanted to kind of give you that statistic. This was taken right before winter break to kind of give you some context. There's been a thing or two that has happened since winter break. So I wanted to acknowledge that. It feels like 50 years ago. Our items in our letter are all about attracting, developing, engaging, and retaining high quality talent. Hours and amounts of work we think are probably more retention, but quite frankly, you could probably logically tie every single aspect of our letter to all of those elements. So with that, I'll pass it on to Eric for compensation.
So in our survey of staff, there's a few priorities that kind of come to the top as they were looking at what they wanted to prioritize. The number one thing that pops is to hit that base salary if we can, because that of course proportionally increases all salaries. We've talked about that before and tried to continue to do some education about that really is the way we can give everyone a bang for their buck. So that is by far the highest priority of more than half of our folks who responded to the survey. We also see that folks would like to see us try and keep as much health insurance covered by the district as possible, which is understandable. And the third one is that shows up on most people's top three is to include step movement if we can do that. So in total and compensation, our hope, acknowledging the world that we're living in and watching Topeka and all of that, is we'd like to see an increase in starting salaries and as well as step and column if that all works out. We'd also be looking at the recommendations from the ECAS committee, as we always do. Are a couple of special things that we have kind of unique in this year is one is to compensate. We have educators who get a bachelor's, master's, or ed specialist that is not really the same as other bachelor's or master's in terms of the length of investment and the amount of hours that go into it. So trying to find a way to better reflect that. A couple of hours, and when we get to the specifics, we'll talk more about that. And then the other thing that has popped up for us quite a bit is the way that our counselors workload and trying to find ways to compensate them for the extra pieces that they do that many of our other certified educators don't outside the school day.
So hours gonna work, hours are not to work.
Okay, just so you know, in the survey that we sent to the bargaining unit, we did separate out straight compensation items from hours and amounts of work. And so there were a couple things that were really highlighted in the information that we received. The first theme that we noticed was that educators generally want to reduce their workload. That makes sense. So over 40% of respondents indicated that reducing their workload was their first priority behind compensation. And then altogether, 80% of respondents chose that as one of their top three items. And that's everything from personnel paperwork to classroom concerns like new curricula, the amount of students in the classroom that we're serving, that kind of thing. So. And then the next theme that we noticed was that educators generally want their voice to be heard when decisions are being made that will impact their daily work. And then they are interested, of course, in professional autonomy. So there have been some major decisions over the past few years at all levels, and with chances for appropriate stakeholders to be involved. And generally, educators are interested in being a part of those conversations when decisions are being made that impact their work. And then hand in hand with that is professional autonomy, so that individual teachers can make decisions that affect their personal classroom, their own individual students, because every building reaches different clientele, right? And so that question was one of the top three priorities for just under 80% of respondents.
All right, as far as SPED retention goes, we did a survey with our special education teachers, and one of the questions that was asked is, how likely are you to leave this job after this school year? So 57% responded very unlikely, and then 36 followed by that 36.8% responded possibly to looking into other opportunities, and then 6% very unlikely. One of the striking things that I saw and that folks will notice is only 40% of autism educators responded very unlikely. Our 25-26 in the Olathe ABA SPED survey had a completion rate of 4%. All right, and this slide just shows a testimonial amongst for a special education teacher. It says, I'm easily working 80 hours a week to manage my paperwork expectations. My anxiety level is extremely high as is my high stress level. as I no longer have personal downtime. I'm getting up early and staying up very late working on paperwork just to keep up. I live and breathe work. The situation I am in is impacting my personal life and what I can do outside of school, as I'm having to give up things that I normally would do. So I think that's fairly representative for a lot of our special education staff. So that's one thing that's really important to look at is and just acknowledge is some of our SPED folks don't necessarily feel like their voices are necessarily heard all the time, and 8 hours a week that doesn't leave a lot of room for other things outside of the work day, and we just want to improve their quality of life as well. So as far as hours and amount of work that relate to NEA as proposing the addressing of the additional workload of bargaining unit positions, which require extensive paperwork. And the amount of paperwork as a special education teacher just continues to grow. And that's not including paperwork for, it also includes time for a paperwork day and for SPED. And the Olathe NEA proposes revisions to the professional day policy and elementary scheduling document guidelines to the related description of individual plan time to clarify the amount of plan time in 4 days weeks.
And then we'd also like to look at professional learning communities. We meet with professional learning communities in a lot of different settings. We meet with them at the building level and we meet with them at the district level. At the district level, we definitely want those PLCs to enhance our collaborative culture in our district. Educators are sharing best practices in those meetings. They are working toward implementing strategies that will help support their students in their own classrooms. And so we seek to align the professional learning policy and related scheduling documents with the goals and structures of professional learning communities. So we'd like to support that work for sure. Additionally, should compensation items be limited, we'll see, right? Due to the legislature's underfunding of excess costs of special education, we understand as members of professional council that we're going to need to be collectively creative and to achieve compensation expectations from our bargaining unit. And one suggestion is that we seek to reduce the number of contract days.
Next, we'll go to mandatory items. Within this, we want to share some data. On our survey, about 40% selected that it was important to them and valued to them to reduce the number of blackout days, to provide more flexibility in using PTO amongst their top 3 priorities. And then 55% selected prioritize safe and healthy workplaces, including increased supports for student behavior in their top 3 priorities, which I think the district sees that value as well with Compass coming in the next school year. So I am glad to see that the data aligns with what our educators are wanting and needing. So first, we are looking at the leave policy, including but not limited to potentially eliminating or substantially revising blackout days. Next, revisions to the managing student behavior language within the agreement to protect staff and student safety. And then revisions to the assignment and transfer primary contract position language in order to provide clarity and consistency in future building closures and consolidations to ensure that we have language that will fit the situations that we're in, as our agreement has never had to deal with building closures. And so we want to make sure that we get language in there to support everyone with what might come in the future.
Permissible items, this is share. So our permissible item that we will share is to have each professional council level subcommittee, so elementary, middle, and high school, evaluate the effectiveness of their academic interventions and the educator responsibilities during that intervention time. So it looks a little bit different at each level because middle and high have the specific time, whereas elementary school is more integrated in their instructional time. But again, that's why each of them have their own subcommittee and to allow those committees to recommend changes as needed or if needed.
All right. Again, we're just entering meeting every student's need every day. We know we take care of our educators. We are taking care of our students. So any questions? We've got our negotiations meeting set for fourth quarter. So starting at the end of March, that's our next meeting. So we'll do the VERP and retirement insurance benefit update. And then we have the 7th of April, 13th of April, 22nd, 28th. And then if we need May 6th, obviously if we weren't at a position to have a tentative agreement at that time, then we would go into the summer. I don't think anybody here necessarily wants that. But I had some people ask, do you just have those dates because you predetermined that you'll be finished? We will do what we need to do to come to the tentative agreement that's best for all parties. So, of course, if we were to reach a tentative agreement before that time, we would then cancel the meetings that we don't need. Anything else for the comment? Well, again,
Thank you.